And hello, loves. It is another time for another review. Thank you all for coming back. Well appreciated. But yes, this month's review is The Prince of Egypt. Sound familiar because it is a long time story done multiple ways. Yes, it is the story of Moses and the Exodus, or at least DreamWorks' depiction of it. And I have to say, it was a pretty good movie, one that I have no problem with watching multiple times. But let's get down and dirty into the actual review. Is there any foul language or phrases? No, there wasn't any that I came across. Magic, this one's a bit complicated. Yes, there is magic. I mean, it's the story of Moses and the exodus of the Jews, so yeah, there is straight up magic, but not in a promoting kind of way, just more so following the true events kind of way. Of course, God's power comes out on top. Is it entertaining? I think it's pretty entertaining, definitely an Easter and or Passover type watch, which mentioning so, I think it's kind of funny and surely God's plan that this review got placed right in between of the two of those. I was back and forth between doing this one now or next month between Chosen Season 1 and 3, so I think it's kind of crazy that doing this, it kind of timed perfectly without planning. Like literally I was editing the script and I'm like, oh, wait a second. Yeah, I'm kind of glad that I settled down and decided to do this one because this one is one that I had up waiting. I have a couple up and waiting just for funsies, but not wanting to do them just quite yet. And this was one of them, and I finally got down and did it. And yeah, the timing, just literally God's work. But now let's get into the actual movie itself. This story is pretty straightforward. It's of Moses and the Israelites leaving Egypt. It's not an exact rendition, but more so an artistic version with most of the main elements staying the same, the key ones that keep the story reminiscent to the true one. I do enjoy how they expand on certain parts of the story, and though I know they are fiction, it still helps you get an understanding of how these were real people and things happening and not some fairy tale with black and white topics and people. Yes, there are certain things that are evil and bad, and alongside that being the thing, this movie makes you think of the complexity of it all. I get more specific when we get into those specific things I'm talking about as we go through the movie. So let's go ahead and start more so talking about the storyline. We start off very much the same with Moses' mom going about saving her baby from the massacre being had. See, during this time, the current pharaoh was afraid of how large the population was getting of the Hebrews. Not only did he enslave them to keep them under control, but he killed off all the baby boys during a certain period of time. This, of course, means that for Moses to be, he was kept in hiding from his birth, but as babies are, they get loud, and it was going to be harder to keep him undetected. Oh, and this is a musical, which I don't always care for, but the numbers in this one are just beautiful, so I did not mind at all this being a musical. I could be wrong, but I don't think they had Marian's song in this or Moses's, and I figured they could have been perfect additions. I mean, I get it, but I mean, it being a musical, I just kind of thought it was a bit of a bummer to me. But back to it. Moses' mom puts him in the basket and into the Nile River before Pharaoh's daughter quickly finds him. She has her own son, and the two grow up together. Soon things shift into the future when Moses and Ramses are adults and racing through the chariots. It's sweet to see the bond between the two, and of course our main dude is the troublemaker of the two, seeming to always pull Ramsey into shenanigans that later are touched on more. Their little stunt causes the construction of a statue being made to quickly come to a halt, more so demolished, and they are quickly called into Pharaoh to be scalded. Ramsey is the one in the heat of it, as he is meant to hold himself better, with him supposed to be the next line to be Pharaoh. And once he leaves, Moses talks to Pharaoh and tries to get him to go a little bit easier on him, and tells him that if Ramsey was given the chance, he'd be able to prove to himself. And you can really see the generational drama here. Like, no wonder he was such a terror. Like, again, I know it's fiction, but yeah, generational trauma is not just a now thing, it's just more so a now thing being revealed as an actual thing. I tease, I understand, we don't actually know, but it was done well in this and really makes you see how that could be the case, and if not, is the case for many. That's why we need to be careful of the pressure we put on our kids. Moses soon finds Ramsey, and here's where we get the idea of the dynamic between the two as Ramsey rants about it, and then still gets tied into another mischievous plan from Moses of dropping some water on the magicians. Yeah, like I said, there is magic here, so yeah, there is legit magicians, and not, I'm not being magical, but I will make you think I'm magical. No, these dudes were actually, like, doing some crafts, and not the arts and crafts kind of crafts. I really love the brotherly dynamic between the two, which makes the later on just a little bit more hurtful. And I do not so apologize for any background noise you hear. It is raining where I'm at, and I say not so apology because I figured maybe it gives it a bit of an ambiance for y'all. But yeah, I guess it's better than some other kind of background noises. But back to the review. They end up going to a banquet, and we get to see that Pharaoh took Moses' suggestion when Ramsey is named Prince Regent. I cannot say that word, but yes, he is basically a big deal, which means he oversees all the temples, and yeah, like I said, a big deal. We are even introduced to another character, a spunky young Midian woman who was captured and then given to Ramsey, who gives her to Moses. Like, let's pass around the actual living human being, why don't we? It might not be love at first sight, but definitely is an enemies to lover kind of trope, and it's not what happens in the real story, but definitely a sweet added aspect. There's a bit of a scuffle between the two before she's taken away and Ramsey names Moses chief architect. After the party, Moses goes to his room where Zipporah, the Midianite woman, was taken, and he's about to talk to her before noticing, yeah, hey, that girl? Yeah, she's not where she's supposed to be, and instead there's a servant tied up in her place, and yeah, she ended up escaping. Our girl's definitely got some spunk and wits about her. He heads down to follow her, even telling guards who were about to spot her to head in a different direction to keep her from getting caught. He's really impressed by her. He follows her further before bumping into Miriam and Aaron, his siblings, but he doesn't know that to be true. Another detail I think is a bit different. Yeah, here Miriam goes on to tell him that Moses is their brother, and he is not hearing it. Even more so when she tells him that he's a Hebrew and was meant to be killed. He heads back to the palace and is in a complete tivy now as things spiral for him as he questions his identity. Even more so after he dreams and has a nightmare about the massacre, and art displaying it is found and it proves that it was true. So yeah, our boy is just complete downward spiral. He talks to Pharaoh, who also confirms it, claiming how sacrifices must be made and even how little he sees the Hebrews. But maybe don't say that to the Hebrew son you adopted. Maybe correct your words a little bit. Like, I get it. You don't see it as a bad thing, but yeah, maybe the one who's actually Hebrew might see it as a little bit of, okay, if you think they're bad and worthless, then what do you think of me? Our poor guy's whole self-esteem is just ripped away. His mother tries to comfort him, but it doesn't do much, and Pharaoh's daughter's mother, his mother from, his adopted mother, not his actual mother, sorry. He asks why she chose him, and she claims that it was the gods who sent him, which, yeah, maybe not gods as much as God, but also not for the same reason you think. Moses gets to meet his brother, and now the sight of the Hebrews being slaves weighs on him more than before. Knowing that he was meant to be one of them, he notices one being yelled at and whipped, and this is his breaking point as he tries to help but instead accidentally kills a slave driver instead. This sends our guy even more over the edge. It seriously is just one thing after another for our dude. Ramsey tries to tell him that even though he killed the guy, he can simply just pardon him, that he doesn't have to worry about it, and yeah, really, money empower solves everything kind of attitude. But Moses doesn't feel the same. He ends up letting this be the point that makes him run away finally. He simply heads to the desert, not packing or thought prior, just going straight without stopping. Days pass before a camel finally stumbles upon him, and he grabs on and just lets it drag him anywhere else. It takes him to a well where some girls are being harassed, and he helps them by getting the guys harassing them to worry more about their escaping horses before he stumbles into the well himself, because our dude has been out for days with no water or anything, so his strength is basically non-existent. The girls are grateful and try to help him out before a familiar face comes along. It's our girl Zipporah from earlier. She's the older sister, and she lets him drop back into the well when realizing who he actually is. We also get a comment from her sisters about that being the exact reason she will never marry, which I thought was fairly funny. Our girl is definitely not one to take any punches or give much care to people who don't deserve it in her eyes. We meet their father, Jethro, who is completely delightful. He's stoked that Moses helped his girls and offers him to come to dinner. He definitely becomes the father Moses needs as he is beginning to get him out of his slump. Our dude finally is full pout after Jethro praises him, and Moses then claims that he doesn't deserve anything as he never has done anything of honor. But Jethro is not letting him have it, as he tells him how even the small things count for honor, how him simply helping Zipporah and his daughters are enough. You have to let the small honors add to the others to create a bigger picture. We get a song as time goes on, and our guy really is coming into his own, and we watch him grow as his relationship with Zipporah does as well, as she begins to kind of see the self he truly is, like the little sweetheart. Our next scene is of a morning he's leaving to shepherd, and in this scene, I really thought our girl was pregnant, which, I mean, would have been a nice touch as they did have at least one son at this point, but yeah, no. It was just the way she was laying and sleeping that kind of made her look like she had a belly bump, but no, it was just, like I said, the way she was sleeping. Moses had definitely aged some though, and in the real story it would have been 40 years after he left, but I don't know if they are sticking to the exact timeline, but yeah, some time has definitely passed. I'm just not sure exactly how much in this story rendition. Shepherding, a sheep runs off, and following it, Moses notices a light coming from a cave and follows it to find a burning bush. But the fire isn't burning the bush up, nor him when he touches it. He then hears a voice as God begins to talk to him. Honestly, I really love this scene. It is done in such a beautiful way, like, really is. God tells him how he wants Moses to save his people. Of course, he doesn't take it all that well because he's still feeling unworthy, which this way was very much the case in the actual story as well. Moses feeling that he just had no reason to be the one claimed to help God, or not help God, go for God to save his people. The Bible even tells how Moses was the most humble person in the Bible. God gets to be the tough God for a moment, freaking out and putting Moses into perspective of his might before becoming calm again. Well, freaking out Moses, not freaking out on Moses, which, yeah, he kind of did that as well, but not in a loose temper, just more so like, hey, I'm going to stern my voice, you are going to listen to me because I am your father. That kind of freaking out. But like I said, I wasn't meaning freaking out, but more so like he freaked Moses out, because I mean, anyone in that position probably would have been freaked out too. But like I said, this is such a beautiful scene. Like, all around, the visuals, music, and voices, just everything about it they did, it makes it like feel like something like just awe-inspiring is the way I can explain it. It's just, you have to watch it. It just touches you in a way that it wouldn't if they did it any other way, or maybe, I don't know, like it's a very emotional and tense scene, and to me personally. Moses tells Zipporah the news, and she's not so sure about it, but he points out that her people are free, and that's what he wants for his as well, which, yeah, fair. If you're free, you don't really have much of an argument to say that the ones who aren't shouldn't have the same. You don't really have a fair viewpoint of something which you don't also have to suffer for. Like, I get it completely. And I mean, no one should be a slave to anyone. Just point in blank? I cannot think of that word. You get what I'm trying to say. Moses does end up heading back with support, and Ramses is actually stoked to see him. They share a sweet exchange, and this part is the nuance I enjoy in this story that I was talking about earlier. How close they are, yet how they are on polar ends of something that makes them enemies still. The magicians claim that Moses should still be punished, but Ramses quickly pardons him. This, of course, is before Moses tells him why he truly is there. Ramses assumes it's for him and quickly gets upset when he finds out that's not the case. Moses tells him that God came to him and put him in charge of settling his people free, even showing the sign of his staff, turning into a snake to prove the power God holds. Of course, this doesn't go over too well, as the magicians have the same trick up their sleeve. This makes Pharaoh not give much mind to Moses' threats, but the thing that I enjoy that's done is something that happened too. They have a musical number with the magicians creating two snakes of their own, but it's through watching the actual shadows that you see Moses' staff swallows up both of theirs, which is a biblical aspect that actually happened, and it kind of gives you the aspect of how they are putting on the show yet aren't paying much attention to what matters. They feel almighty, thinking that they have two, which makes them better, but the fact of the power is shown by the signs of God showing up theirs. Things might seem shiny and big, but that doesn't always mean that they hold the greater power. Ramses tries to talk to Moses. They go into private, and here's where Daddy's trauma plays in, as Ramses speaks of why he simply can't let the Hebrews go, how he holds the weight of his father's crown and has to keep up tradition. This is where it hits that Moses came for his people and not Ramses, which just hurts. I get it to hear that your brother, that someone you were close to, came back into your life, not even for you, but for someone else that you didn't even see them truly connected to. Just, like I said, it just hits hard. This hits even harder when Moses hands him the same ring Ramses gave him earlier when granting him chief architect, and this just pushes Ramses into a fit, and he puts a double workload onto the Hebrews because of Moses. Moses heads out and gets grief from his people, even Aaron, which I found in poor taste. Like, I didn't find much in this movie in poor taste, because I get it, it's an artistic rendition and not the exact thing, but this specifically, like, you often hear that Moses was the head of, or like, Moses did all this, and this, and yes, he did. At the same time, Moses gave up the opportunity, which he had no problem with. Dude, like I said, was humble, so he was constantly like, hey, God, take this off of me. Like, I don't care about this. I don't want this. I want you. I want to do what you want, but like, hey, can like someone else get the glory? I mean, of course you're always going to get the glory, but can some other man get the glory that I'd be getting, kind of deal? Like, I don't want this. I just want you and to do what you want, but if it's what you want, then yeah, fine. But at the beginning of the story, like I said, he was a bit of a not wanting to do it, and so got an argument with God, or at least as much of an argument you can get with God when you're seeing, or like as close to him as you were, which means you're gonna hold your tongue for the most part, but maybe try to still wiggle in some words here and there. But basically, Aaron was supposed to be the one doing all this, with basically Moses being the in-between, like, or I guess more so they were both the in-between. It was more so like God spoke to Moses, who spoke to Aaron, who spoke to everyone else. So it was kind of like Moses was the in-between between God and Aaron. Aaron was the in-between between Moses and the people. So the fact of that being taken out, which is taken out often, I don't have too much of an issue with. I kind of do, but I mean, it's happened so much, I guess it doesn't bother me as much, which I guess kind of should, but still. But back to it. That being the case, that I could understand more so, because like I said, it's something that happens often. DreamWorks is not a Christian studio, so they're not going to get everything exactly right. But this one specifically kind of hit hard in a poor way. The fact of that Aaron was part of the people that was giving him grief, which was like kind of like, okay, DreamWorks, you might have overstepped just a little bit with this. Maybe not everyone agrees, but I mean, yeah, the grief from the Hebrews was canon. I have no problem with that. What I specifically had a problem with was the fact that Aaron was a big part of this. Aaron being Moses' right-hand man and mouthpiece would have put him in the same boat. Like, he was in the same boat. He was the one getting grief, not giving grief, really. I mean, dude slipped up when it came to the calf when Moses was up on the mountain, but that's a story that's for another time, not for this movie. But yeah, in this scene, he was kind of in the same boat. Like, he was getting grief too, so him giving the grief, I don't know, it just hit me the wrong way. Moses had issues speaking, stage fright, if you would, to the extreme. So Aaron was the one that was actually telling Pharaoh everything, like I said earlier. He had a slow tongue, as it is, to be more specific of the actual problem of why he claimed he didn't want to speak for God. So God placed Aaron to be the actual one to do the speaking. But let's end that rant for now, because it gone on for maybe a bit too long. But hey, Girls Gotta Rant. It's my channel. Get to do what I want. Appreciate you for listening. Skip through if you don't want to. But I mean, I guess you already listened through if you got to this point. But yeah, let's get back into the actual review. But to be fair, that is kind of a review. I am reviewing and giving my opinion about it. So, okay. Still with the review, we will say it that way. Moses goes to the river and he ends up turning the blood into water. This is something else that the magicians can mimic, but this leads into the rest of the plagues. Frogs, gnats, flies, death of livestock, boils, hail, locusts, and darkness. One thing that's a cool detail I love is that all the plagues were actually mockeries of the Egyptian gods. Like, this is an actual thing, each one tied to a god they worshipped and proved so that God had more power that they didn't, or I guess power in general, which they didn't. How, in a sense, it was God versus their deities. And let's just say we know who came out on top. This leaves off on the most horrendous plague, which just hurts so much more. Even still, Moses goes to Pharaoh trying to get him to stop the madness, as he knows what comes next, or at least what's taken next. They share a little moment recalling memories, and it almost seems to work until Ramses' son comes in and reminds him of his anger, and his heart is hardened once more, which I get it. When your kid is suffering, that just kind of makes you just want to be more so like hard and stern and try to get rid of that hurt the best way you can. It's just doing so is just going to cause more hurt in this specific situation. It really does speak volumes with Pharaoh's attitude about it all. He sees it as Moses' fault and not seeing it as his own stubborn nature that truly is pulling it on himself, because that really was the deal. Because constantly it's like, hey, you want this to stop, then just let us free. Like, dude, like, is it really worth all of this? Like, just let us free. Like, I get you want the power over us, I get you want us like under your thumb, but like, is it really worth losing and suffering all your suffering? Yeah. This words are even spoken by Ramses about it is a reflection of his father's past horrors when killing the Hebrew boys, and talks about it in a way that basically tells of what's to come, saying how a cry will be heard in Egypt far worse than ever before, but it's not the Hebrews that will be crying this time, and it really is sad, like, watching it. But like I said, it's just sad. The death angel comes and takes all the firstborns of those that are not in a house covered by the directions of God. So Pharaoh's son is also taken. So in a sad sense, trying to protect his son from hurt made him have the worst hurt that can happen. This whole scene, though, like, the Death Angel and everything is just, oh my goodness, amazing. Like, this whole movie really is. But another one, this is definitely another one that I want to keep for my watch list and get of my own. Like, I especially love how they did the spiritual stuff in this scene, like the mournful and slightly airy vibe you get while the Death Angel comes and goes through to taking all the firstborn. It's like, oh, it's another scene. Like, the one with the burning bush is just another one you just have to see for yourself. It's just an experience. I mean, I get maybe not everyone feels the same, but I mean, especially for how old this movie is, this definitely was, like, this was an amazing scene. Breathtaking. The cry is heard after the Death Angel leaves, and we are brought to see Pharaoh laying his son on a table and placing a sheet over him while Moses walks in. This is finally the thing that pushes him to set the Hebrews free. It's just tragic that this had to be the thing to finally do it. Even Moses is broken up about it. He breaks down shortly after leaving Ramses. It's a tragedy, but now the Hebrews need to move and head out while they still can, with Pharaoh being so fickle. This being more defined in the Bible, as Pharaoh multiple times went back on his word, saying, hey, I'll go ahead and allow this. Just pray to your God to take this plague away. And after it was taken away, he would go back on it. Like I said, it was really Pharaoh doing this on himself, because dude could have just easily let the Hebrews free multiple times, gave his word that he would, or that they could worship or whatever, and just turned back and was like, you know what I said? Yeah, I take that back. It's only a matter of time before he ends up changing his mind again, which, dude definitely does. The Hebrews head out and feel like things are fine once beside the Red Sea, but the feeling quickly turns when the pressure again from Pharaoh and his people are put down on them when they come to take them back. They aren't sure what to do, as they are now blocked in with seemingly no way out. That is until God once more provides a way by both directing Moses to separate the sea so that they can go through, and letting down a pillar of fire to keep back the Egyptians while the Hebrews cross through. Can you imagine, though? Lightning flashing, and even whales and sharks and all kinds of sea creatures just right beside you. Like, so to think of everything just still there, just held back, it's like baffling to think about how it would be to walk through that. Like, imagine being in an aquarium with everything, but there's no glass holding the water back, just an unseen force. Like, you could touch the water, put your hand through, and just, like, so cool and terrifying just the same. The pillar does eventually go back down and lets the Egyptians follow them, but it's only a trap to cause them to go into the sea and have the water crash down on top of them. But the Israelites do come out safely across. Ramses too ends up fine, as he was cast away onto a rock. Not canon, but we also don't know if he was caught up in it all, so maybe not. I get it's not. I'm just this finally is a blissful freedom that can set in on them. Zipporah even mentions to Moses what he did earlier, giving him comfort of how now his people get to be free. This would be where I expect Miriam's song to be, if it was in here, where she actually sings it in the Bible, but it's not. At least I don't think it is. I looked it up, I didn't really see it. But let's not get into that rant. We get a final scene of Moses bringing down the tablet, and that is the end of the movie. That is. The story goes far beyond that. I mean, a whole Bible and beyond far. But for a movie, I think they chose a good spot to end. And that is it for the review. And yes, I thank you all for coming and listening to my review and my rants and just my lovely voice. I appreciate you all. And yes, I have plans to do Chosen Season 2 next. It is currently in the works, so hopefully that will be the next review. But thank you all for coming. Please like, subscribe, and push that notification bell if you want to know when a next review drops. But that is it for now. I pray blessings upon you all. Goodbye.